super excited to be here and just really honored and humbled at the opportunity to kind of share my story. I have somewhat of an interesting story on how I got to where I am with this online handstand course and how it sort of reshaped my life. Let's flash back to, January 2016, Denver, Colorado. Life was good. I had my sales and marketing job for a very cushy software company. Wasn't facing a ton of challenges. Everything just kind of seemed to be on cruise control. And I got a job offer from a former CEO of mine. And he said, hey, I got this new company and we are funded. We got 25 million from Bain Capital. We got an office in New York and we want to open one in California. Will you be the guy to open our California branch? And I sat with that for a while because I lived in Denver for so long. And this is like where my home is, my family, and like not blood family, but like my fam. And I decided, it's time for me to step out of this comfort zone and take a risk. Little did I know I would be taking a much bigger risk. In March of 2016, I got moved in to California and something just wasn't smelling right with the company that had just hired me. And there was a couple bugs in the software that were questionable. And as it turns out, within 2 weeks of moving to California and signing a $2,700 a month lease on an apartment, they let me go. Not only did they let me go, they just flat out said, hey, we made a pretty big mistake and we're not even opening a California office at all. Sorry about that. So I was, as you might imagine, just absolutely devastated. The first instinct for me was to do the safe thing and call up my old boss. I could have got my job back. I could have broke the lease on the apartment, but something was like, no, man, there's like a golden opportunity in here. You have no income, which is scary when you live in, Orange County. It's not exactly the cheapest place to live in the whole world. But something brought you here. So just like, let's figure this out. Let's hurry up and figure it out. And so I panicked and I just went job hunting, right? Any director level sales position I could find for a software company. I was calling. I got an interview with an app company. And for the first time in my life, I interviewed for a job and I didn't get it. And that's when it just kind of hit me in the face that, dude, you have to be your own business. You have to start something that makes you happy. I've started businesses before in the past. I have a yoga site from like 2012. But I just knew that if I stayed in California and kind of stuck to the past, something would happen. So after about 3 days of kind of, feeling sorry for myself, I knew nothing was going to change unless I changed. And so I was the only one that was going to, dig myself out of this situation. It's not like someone was going to come knock on my door with some amazing job opportunity. So I knew one thing about my own like mental development, and that is when I surround myself with kind of positive thoughts and affirmations and books and audiobooks, is that I can change my energetic relationship with the universe. And so a good example of this happened shortly after I lost my job and was in a massive, like I said, panic. I threw on an audiobook called Becoming Magic by the pen name is Genevieve Davis. That's not her real name, but it was about an hour long. And I was going up to Santa Monica that day. And so I had about an hour long drive, and it was very strange, some of the stuff that she was saying in this book. And it's about how to kind of create your own reality, whether it's love or finance or business or happiness or whatever form of wealth you consider valuable. And I was cruising up to Santa Monica, and she talked about, the wanting versus having, and you got to be grateful for the things you have versus like pining for the things you want. Because when you get grateful for the things you have, that attracts more of that into your life. And when you are always thinking about things that you want, that just induces more of a state of wanting, AKA not having. And one of the lines in the book, and she said something to the effect of, no matter when the chips are down, no matter how dire your situation is, you need to always be looking on the positive. And the line that stuck with me was something to the effect of, let's say, even if your lover just left you, or let's say you took a big risk and moved across country for the big money job and it let you down. And I was like, wow, that's, kudos, hats off to you, spot on for the prediction. And so I got through the audiobook and I started doing all these affirmations. This was happening in my car as I was driving. And I have a yoga background and a fitness background. And I decided I'm going to make a run at this. I'm legit going to try to make it as a full-time yoga teacher in California. Park my car in Santa Monica. I go to the beach and I'm like doing these affirmations as I'm walking to the beach. And I'm holding in my hand as I'm walking handstand canes. It's like a performance apparatus. And a girl comes up to me and she's like, hey, do you do handstands on those? And I was like, yeah, a little bit. And she's like, oh, do you teach yoga? And I said, yeah, I do teach yoga. And she's like, that's so great. My mom owns a yoga studio and we're looking for more male instructors. And in my head, I was like, holy shit. Like, in my car, like 5 minutes prior, was having this big emotional breakdown about like, I'm making my declaration to the universe. I am going to be a full-time yoga instructor in California. And this girl finds me at the beach. To take it one kind of meta layer, above, I said, all right, awesome. Let's chat sometime. But the thing is, I don't live here in Santa Monica. I live in Orange County. And she's like, oh, that's where our studios are. And I said, okay, that's super weird. So I explained to her like the whole episode I just had in my vehicle. And before I know it, she hands me a phone. Like, here. I was like, what are you doing? She's like, it's my mom. She wants to talk to you. So within 5 to 10 minutes of me like making this declaration to the universe that I'm going to create something for myself, I was being literally handed a phone with the owner of a yoga studio. So that was when it first hit me. I was like, okay, I can create my own reality. So I dove back into teaching. And then I started getting picked up, a studio in Orange County, Raw Yoga, if anyone goes there. And I really got focused on this thing about handstanding. It had always been an obsession of mine. And I met a couple of circus sort of level hand balancers that I started taking coaching from. And before too long, I was running like courses at Raw Yoga, and all the while savings account going down, amount of free time and fun though was going up. And I knew that wasn't exactly the most like financially responsible thing to do. But again, I was like, I'm back. I'm going to do this. I'm starting my own business, and it's going to be me, and I'm not going to be relying on anyone else. And then something pretty kind of strange had happened July of 2016, where I was subbing a class for my buddy Joey. I walk in and there's a woman there and she says, hey, are you Kyle from Denver? And I was like, yeah, that's, have we met? And she's like, well, we never met. 4 years ago, I was visiting my sister in Denver. I live in Australia, and I took your class in Denver, and I happened to be in Orange County for the day. And I saw your name and I wanted to come take your class. So we had like a little moment, right? And then after class, she says, hey, I didn't want to like mess with your mojo or anything before class, but I own a studio down in Melbourne, Australia. Would you like to come teach at it? And I was like, wow, on the off chance I subbed a class. And then in the world of whatever you want to call it, law of attraction, synchronicity, say whatever it is. I follow a lot of Joe Dispenza, so I do believe that there is a energetic relation between the chemistry in my brain and the universe around me. And so I was like, okay, this makes sense. This makes sense. Meanwhile, again, savings account getting real close to zero, credit cards going up because the math of trying to do full-time yoga teaching in Orange County, you would have to teach an almost impossible amount of classes. And so I went to Australia they paid for it, thankfully. And that's when things started to kind of take off. Like, okay, I can keep going with this whole like handstand teaching thing and make a career out of it. And then a year goes by and I'm just kind of grinding. I'm barely making ends meet. Like finances were rough, but I honestly loved the way I spent my time just training. And then I got the opportunity to go to Australia for a second time to go teach. And it was July of 2017. And as I was leaving, one of the students was like, hey, do you have like any online handstand courses? And I was like, Kyle, you idiot. How do you not have an online handstand course yet? So I got super motivated. I wrote the thing, I scripted the thing, I shot it, and then I had it ready to go by like November of 2017. And keep in mind, savings account going down, credit card debt going up, barely making ends meet, but I was determined to not get off of the path that I was on. I launched in November 2017, and anyone who's ever done a product launch knows the excitement around that. And it didn't go as planned, to say the least. I thought, okay, I have this course that's $175, if I'm going to sell like 10 a day or like 100 this month or whatever it was. Upon launch, I sold 4. One of them was my mother. So 3 legitimate customers. However, it did show me like, okay, I can do this. There's something to this. I have an online course at kyleweiger.com. And it's built, I have a product. Now I just got to figure out how to market it. So I had a little bit of money, not very much. And I ended up in Denver, Colorado to visit some friends, and I was teaching a workshop there. The workshop funds are what sort of like kept me afloat at that time. And I remember I was out to dinner with my best friend, and dinner and beer for which he had to pay for because I didn't have any money. And for the first time in my life, I cried over finances. I had always had jobs. I had always been like fairly successful in those jobs. I had never missed a car payment, which I had that month for the first time in my life. And I was like, man, I'm like 35 years old and I am struggling for cash. I just thought I would be somewhere so different. And we were, having our beer, kind of having a bestie moment. And he's a fairly well-to-do, he's a guy, he's in the coaching world. He's like got 150,000 YouTube subscribers. He's a well-known dude. And he probably could have at that moment bailed me out and, let me, 10, 20 grand just to whatever, keep me afloat for the next few months. But he turned to me and he's like, you're going to figure this out. And I was like, what makes you say that? And he's like, because you have to. Like you're missing car payments. Like this isn't like you're going to figure this out. And so at the end of 2017, I had like $200 in my savings account after I had got rent paid and all that stuff. And I took that $200 and I threw it at an Instagram ad that like right now I have a very complex funnel with, cart abandonment sequences and customer ascension journeys and all that. But back then my funnel was free video and then point them to the product. And so I threw this $200 at an ad for my free handstand video that would get people on my email list. And then lo and behold, some people bought my course. And then a few more people bought my course. And then January 1st hit, and that's a big day in the fitness world because that's when everyone has their resolutions. That is when, people get really motivated. And I remember going into my online banking, which is something I avoided like the plague, because when you're poor, you thinking about or talking about or looking at numbers. But I went to my online banking and I had like my business account had $2,000 in it, which was the most amount of money I had seen in my bank account for the last probably 18 months. And what I did is I took that 2K and I rolled that into a little bit more Facebook advertising. I started getting more sales, more advertising, more sales, more advertising. And what had happened then from the beginning of 2018 to where I am now is, it's absolutely life-changing. I have a multi-6-figure business that sells a handstand course. So if you're thinking of starting a business and you think your idea is too niche, I beg to differ. And by the way, I filmed the entire thing on an iPhone and this little tripod, this right here. Now, there was a lot of late nights staying up, trying to figure out what to do and how to structure my business, a lot of late nights in the studio crying. There was one time where I had filmed like 30 minutes of a segment of a 60-minute video with no sound on. And it was just frustrations kind of kept compounding and compounding. But again, I was like, stay the path. Don't get off of this. This is what you want to do. So I hate to say it, but force the issue. Like if you just keep doing this, it's going to pan out. And then once the course really started gaining traction, I remember thinking, I want to sell like a few hundred courses, a year that at least put some money in my pocket. And then I can go like, figure out what I need to do next. As of like last month, we have surpassed 5,800, almost 6,000 people have purchased my online courses, all because I decided to take a talent of mine that I had and something I was super passionate about and never, ever deviate from that path. Any good entrepreneur out there has cut their teeth more than a few times and has had their fair share of heartbreak and inflection points where it would be incredibly easy to quit. And no one would even blame you. right? No one would even say, oh man, it's too bad it didn't work out. Yeah, business is hard. But to anyone who's crossed the chasm and gotten to the other side of that, they know that it's, when you're on the other side, it is totally worth it. Now, if I were to know in the beginning, like my naivety played into my success, because if I would have known in the beginning how long the path was going to be and how hard it was going to be and how much like stress or frustration I was going to have to go through before I experienced all this like joy, I probably would have never gotten started. And one thing that kept me going through the entire way, as I, I flash back to that book, Becoming Magic, and that one like beautiful car ride up to Santa Monica. In that book, she talks a lot about journaling things you're grateful for. Now, when you're broke and stressed out for money, and your life isn't where you wanted it to be at this age, finding things to be grateful for, it's just easier to complain. Honestly, it's easier to say, oh, my life sucks, and it's that company's fault. They screwed me. They put me in this situation. But what I chose was different. I every morning I would wake up and I woke up on the floor, by the way. One thing about me, I slept on the floor for about a year. I did the whole minimalist caveman thing. So when you wake up at age 35, 36, and you're sleeping on the floor and you have no money in your bank account, what can you be grateful for? So I made a practice of just being like, okay, you know what? I live in Orange County. It's one of the most beautiful places to live in the entire world. I got that. It's sunny every day. I live in a place where the rest of the country comes to vacation. And I just kept that attitude the entire time. And it ended up paying off that this like attitude of gratitude really built up sort of a gratitude savings account of energy in my body. And I was just able to unleash that out into the universe. And I feel like that played a big role in getting me to where I was. I now have a company called MemberDev, where we help entrepreneurs do what I did, right? We take their courses online. It's a platform where you can host it. So it spun itself into all of these different things. I have a handstand business that runs in the background. I hardly touch it. It makes me a good amount of money. And now I'm able to help other entrepreneurs with that experience and put their stuff on a platform as well. So I think I got about 4 or 5 minutes here left. I want to open it up to questions if there are any. And if there's anything you guys can take away from this, is get started and don't stop.
There are a few questions. We just got a question from Arash, and he said, Kyle, what can you do? What do you consider the first step for people starting out with a new idea? What's the most important thing to do to keep you going as you're going through the hardships?
Write it down. Write down your, I did this actually, and this is a kind of another strange synchronicity story. I remember before I launched the course, I had recorded it and I wrote down, I want to teach X amount of studio classes a week. I want to do X amount of traveling gigs, and I want my course to sell this much, and da 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 da. And then a few years later, I moved over to the west side of town. And I was unpacking and I pulled out that journal and I honestly like welled up because I had hit that. So I believe it's Arash, write it down. Write it down, focus on it, stare at it until it looks weird, stare at it until you don't like it, put it away, come back to it again. I write everything down because when you write something, you're using a number of different senses. You're saying it in your head, you're feeling it through the dexterity of the hands, and you're watching it visually. And after you write it down, you close your eyes, you can actually feel it kinesthetically. So just remember that nothing comes easily if it's worth having. So write it down, make it just like blinders on, stare at it every day. Anything else?
Would you be willing, Kyle, can you tell us a little bit more about the books that you mentioned previously so people can write those down? They were obviously quite impactful for you.
Yes, Becoming Magic by Genevieve Davis. She has another one after that called, I think, Being Magic. And then my big one for any entrepreneur in this group, Your Life is Nothing But Like a Series of Habits. There's a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear that reshaped how I think about how I structure my workday, my thoughts, what I do with my free time. So Becoming Magic. And then another one I would say is Rework by Jason Fried. That's the guy who started 37 Signals, a software company responsible for Basecamp. Rework is awesome for any entrepreneur, a must read.
Padma said, Law of attraction and positive thoughts sound great. How could you retain them throughout the period?
Oh man, yeah, I forced it. Instead of listening to music, a lot of times I would deliberately put on audiobooks. Like even if I were in a bad mood, it's like if someone's feeding it into my ears and I can't ignore it, eventually I'm going to become a lot more positive versus listening to like sad music or, you know, anything that would, that would just kind of feed the bad wolf. I want to feed the good wolf, right?
Kyle, super insightful. Thank you so much for your time and knowledge. I always appreciate you. You are just a magical person. So thank you so much.
Thank you for
And
having me, guys.
yeah, thank you.